In conducting its war against Iran, the American military relies heavily on its network of bases across Europe. A uniquely dense concentration of these facilities is located here in Germany, including the particularly important and widely known Ramstein Air Base. The role these bases play in operations that may violate international law, such as the ongoing war against Iran, remains a subject of debate within Germany. German politicians, however, say their stance is clear.
Regarding
the use of Ramstein, there is a stationing agreement between Germany and the United States. The United States stands by this agreement. We have been assured of this, and there is no debate about it. You might be familiar with the verdict from the Federal Constitutional Court. This verdict clearly states that the use of the base is legal.
Ramstein isn't just a strategic command center for the US military, it's also been part of everyday life in this region for decades. But what happens when the soldiers next door suddenly shift to a wartime footing, when military aircraft take on and land constantly, and when reports emerge from around the world of attacks on other bases? Our reporter Tom Gennoy traveled to Kaiserslautern in southwestern Germany to see how this heightened military activity is affecting the region.
Behind me is the biggest American Air Force base anywhere in the world outside of the US, and it's currently playing a major role in the war against Iran. It's currently impossible, therefore, for journalists to access the base, and upon approach, the soldiers are tense. You on like heightened protocol at the moment?
A little bit more than usual.
Okay.
Because of everything.
Fair enough. Is that like since the past couple of days?
It's been like past month.
The past month?
Yeah.
Okay, right.
For a little bit.
Ramstein is a crucial cog in the whirring US war machine. Halfway between the United States and the Middle East, the airbase serves as a central logistics and command center, channeling troops, aircraft supplies and communications. Right now, that role sets it apart from many other US bases across Europe. Ramstein has recently welcomed a number of extra US aircraft from Air Force bases in Spain after the Spanish government said that it did not want its territory to be used to stage attacks on Iran. German policy is full cooperation, and this place is an integral part of ongoing American operations. Indeed, as we'll hear from locals, Ramstein has been a hive of activity in recent weeks. But this is more than just a military installation. Little America, as it's known, is the reason that more than 50,000 Americans live in the area, service personnel and their families. They're deeply integrated into local life. Many of their German neighbors can hardly imagine their home without the American presence.
My name is Jörg Ziegler. I'm the manager of the electric go-kart track in Kaiserslautern. We have a lot of German drivers, I'd say about 60%. The other 40% are from the base.
Like many businesses here in the region, the go-kart track relies on American custom and on good relations with their customer base.
The Americans are great customers for us. We're happy that they're here. In the whole region, we're all delighted that we have the Americans here. Without them, it would be tough. They've invested so much here. The Ramstein Air Base is so important for the Americans, especially with regard to the Middle East. I can't imagine that the Americans would leave, and I wouldn't want them to.
In Ramstein-Miesenbach, the town of fewer than 10,000 souls, which gives the base its name, good relations with the Americans are a priority for the mayor.
We didn't plan for it. In 1951, the Americans came and built the airport by the freeway. And since then, they've been present here, more than 70 years.
Lifelong proximity to the base means the mayor can pick up on signs that something out of the ordinary is happening, as it has been in recent weeks.
When something changes, we notice. From how much the noise changes, more or less flight activity, and recently, a lot has been happening at night. In the past few days, we said something is changing. Something is probably about to happen.
All of which brings the base's tactical purpose back into sharper focus.
We know that the Americans aren't here as tourists, but to do a job. When they say that this place is a powder keg, you also have to remember that the entire NATO Air Force is controlled from here.
Plenty of residents of the region see the US presence as a guarantee of safety. At local cheerleading club Cheer Inc. All-Stars, or CIA, the cultural influence of the base next door could hardly be clearer.
Everybody here in the area is growing up bilingual. Everybody is happy together and it's fine.
For Fabian and his wife Selina, the security implications of having the base nearby are purely positive.
I mean, if you grow up in this area, you know exactly what it is and what they do. But still, I appreciate them being here because it actually makes me feel safe. Because I know they're doing a good job and yeah, it makes me feel safe, actually.
Back at the go-karting track, another local has a different view, but ultimately an equally relaxed outlook.
Of course, the base means we could be a potential target, but nobody around here is scared or in any sort of panic.
And anyway, given the base's long history and deep roots in the region, current affairs aren't a topic too many people are getting hung up on, or indeed want to talk about at all. The US presence is a fact of life here, and as many locals are keen to emphasize, it's one that they are pleased with.
We get on great with the Americans, and we don't really discuss political topics.
William Alberque is a security analyst and former NATO Arms Control Director, so he's an expert on the Western Alliance and the importance of military bases in Germany for the US Army. William, what do we know in the context of the Iran war? What kind of operations is the US Army running from their base in Ramstein?
Right. So Ramstein Air Base is a critical logistics hub for the United States military and flowing material from the continental United States through to Africa and to the Middle East. They've got a major medical facility there. They've got a logistics hub. They've got the air base. It's just a really great logistics hub for the United States to be able to reach into Africa and the Middle East from the continent.
But do we know anything specific that is related to the Iran war? Anything that you know that is being coordinated from Ramstein?
Honestly, I would say logistics and materiel support would be coordinated somewhat from there, but honestly, the logistics hubs are going to be closer to the Middle East. And strategic strikes, those are going to be conducted from the United States, from the major strategic bases where the B-2s and B-52s fly out of. So this is not a major hub for combat operations in the Middle East for the United States.
Okay, but we also know that Ramstein is now a base that is sort of a home for planes that were originally going to land in Spain, but then Madrid said that the US can't use its bases in Spain for activities against Iran. So why is it that Spain can tell Washington, no, you can't use the bases in our country for activities against Iran, but Germany isn't and apparently can't say that to Washington?
It would be very difficult for Germany to limit U.S. capability. They could if they wanted to. It would be a pretty heavy lift because the United States has been based in Germany, since the end of World War II. We have many critical facilities, including the headquarters of U.S. European Command. And so for Germany to suddenly start looking at different operations and say, you can conduct this operation, but not that operation, would be very unusual. Again, not impossible, but it would just be unusual for Germany to do that. Whereas Spain has a much deeper and richer history of choosing how their bases are used and under what conditions. It's aside from the naval bases at Rota, it's much less of a critical facility for the United States, whereas Germany just has so many important facilities to the U.S. military.
And Ramstein is, of course, one of the most important bases of the US, if not the most important base in Europe. The British Air Base Akrotiri on Cyprus was attacked this week, as were US bases in Iraq, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Jordan, the UAE. Where does that leave Ramstein in terms of security, William?
Ramstein is a very low priority target for the Iranian regime and a very highly defended facility for the United States and for Germany. It is deep in the European continent. It would be incredibly difficult for an Iranian drone to reach there or for a missile. Remember, this is part of the reason why NATO built missile defense, was to protect against the potential for an Iranian attack on the European homeland. So I would think that if I were Iranian and I were planning a strike, Ramstein would not be in my top 10 list because it's just so difficult to reach. And it's so far highly likely to have been taken down well before that. Look at the potential attack on Turkey, where everything was taken down by NATO and US assets. I think Germany, Ramstein in particular, is particularly well defended against this type of attack.
But earlier this week, the German Foreign Office summoned the Iranian ambassador, Majid Neely, here in Berlin, and that is a pretty harsh diplomatic measure, right? And Germany wanted an explanation from them why Iran was attacking US bases in those countries that I mentioned earlier. And of course, you and I know that the German army has soldiers in those US bases in Iraq and in Jordan too.
Right.
So, what more should Berlin do so that German soldiers in the region outside of Germany don't get dragged into this war?
Well, I think, to be dragged into the war would mean that Germany was conducting joint offensive operations. And I don't think Germany is going to do that. I don't think the United States would ask that of Germany right now, because I don't think the German military has assets to bear that are particularly useful in Iran's scenario. It may be that later the US does ask, but as for right now, I think it's reasonable for Germany because it does have not only troops in the region, but it also has allies in the region too. It has great relationships with a number of Gulf states. And so for Germany to demand an explanation from Iran as to why it's conducting all these attacks on Germany's allies in the region makes perfect sense. But in terms of being dragged into a war, I don't see Germany conducting offensive operations anytime soon. The situation may change, but right now I can't see that happening.
But how high is the risk that German soldiers could be attacked?
Oh, it's very high. In the same way that it's the German citizens who visit these Gulf states, German citizens who work and live there are under direct threat of attack right now. And, as Iranian drones hit high-rises and apartments and workplaces in the Gulf region, it's likely that Germans who live there might also be injured. So I would say the soldiers are probably the best protected among them. I would be much more worried about the German citizens who, again, live and work in the Gulf states and their safety. That is under tremendous risk today.
But what would that mean for the German government if that happened, if German soldiers got attacked in the region by Iran?
Well, all right. So if they were attacked, that would mean they would be at a U.S. base or a jointly operated base with other countries. I would think Germany would be very angry, and I think they would, especially if they were killed, and I think they would démarche Iran. And if they thought that they were being targeted specifically, then they might act. But ultimately, when you're in a war zone, terrible things can happen. And I don't think Germany would in particular escalate if a German soldier were killed at an American base. I think it would be a terrible thing, and Germany would have to consider what it would do next, but it wouldn't automatically involve Germany in the conflict if Germany chose not to retaliate in any way.
William Alberque, as always, thank you very much for your insights.